Hey everybody, Chris with Overclockersclub. I am back with a cool switch from TRENDnet. This is an 8-port unmanaged 2.5G PoE Plus switch, so packs a lot of punch there even though it's not managed. Oh, the model number is TPE TG380. Looks like the box took a little hit there, but I think we're okay. Let's see. On the side, okay, features. It's got 8 ports, 2.5. All of the ports are. A lot of times you'll have a couple of uplink ports that'll be the higher speed and the others will all be gigabit, but it looks like all 8 are 2.5G. We got a 100 watt PoE power budget. I'll talk about that a little later. So it's 802.3BZ, 2.5G compliant. Supports 802.3 AT and AF. Again, that goes back to the power budget information there. Backwards compatible with 10, 100, and 1000, which is pretty standard. 80 gigabits a second switching capacity. That's sort of like if you look at a highway, that's how many cars you can push through. Fanless design, so it should be quiet, wall mountable for installation flexibility, and power cord, power brick, installation guide, and the switch. We've got multiple languages here, and this sort of shows you a type of situation. It's really pretty simple. You just come off of your router over to the switch, and then whatever devices you need to plug into the switch, you're good. Now I've got a couple of access points here that are 2.5G capable. Most of your cameras, security cameras and stuff, even though they're PoE, or they use PoE, they won't really take advantage of the 2.5 gigabits there because they don't usually use that much bandwidth. They're a fraction of that. So we've got multi-gig speeds, wall mountable, and the 100 watt budget. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get her open. Quick clarification here, the 80 gigabits a second here that I just talked about, that is actually a misprint. It is actually 40, and I will reference that in the specs a little later, but I wanted to point that out. That's just a misprint on the box. And being an unmanaged switch, if you're not sure what that means, an unmanaged switch is just a switch. You plug it in and it just works. There's nothing to log into. There's no username. There's no password. There's no control that you have over it. A managed switch is one that is usually part of a network that you've got multiple devices and you need to access them and control what's going on, modify or adjust settings, things like that. For the average home user, a switch like this, an unmanaged switch, for your home network is fine. A managed switch would be massive overkill. And you can certainly use a managed switch on your home network. It's just pay a lot of money for features and functionality that most people don't need. So this is the power brick, 54 volts, 2.2 amps, almost 120 watts. That's important to know. A lot of times with regular switches that are not PoE capable, your power supplies are usually 12 volts, 1 amp, and you can grab just about any 12 volt, 1 amp power supply and you're fine. But PoE switches are a little different animal in that their power requirements are a little different. So you can't necessarily swap the power bricks. Sometimes you can, but you need to pay attention to that. Okay, so this thing's got some weight to it. It's not plasticky feeling, anything like that. The case here, the cover is metal. The whole chassis is metal. We've got some nice vents along the sides and the back for air circulation. Again, this is fanless, so we don't have to worry about any fan noise, anything like that. So we got the 8 ports across the front. There's a little legend here that sort of tells you what's going on. So, and we'll see when we get it plugged in, you can sort of see what the little lights do, but we've got, looks like a green for 2.5G link. It's flashing when there's activity. If it's orange, or I guess kind of an amber color, those are connection speeds that are below the 2.5G. So if you plugged in for example, a gigabit Ethernet cable from your regular PC that's gigabit speed, then it will flash at the orange or amber color there. PoE, we've got green for power, okay, and then orange for a power fail, amber orange. And let's see, power switch, socket. So PoE max, this will go off if you've overloaded it, I believe. There's a power switch, and then we've got our link and our activity. Looks like the top light there is for your PoE status, and the bottom lights here are for your Ethernet activity and status. So it looks like the lights are over here on the side rather than being at each port that we usually see. And it says 2.5G PoE plus, part number TPE TG380. And that's about it. There's the sticker on the bottom. We got some key slots here, so if you want to hang it on the wall, you can mount it on the wall like that, or facing down, either way. So I think we can go ahead and power it up. And before I do that, let me go ahead and put the little rubber feet. So it comes with little feet that are stamped out. You got the adhesive on one side. You put these at the four corners. There's a little recessed place there. And these just help keep it from sliding around. Give it a little bit of vibration dampening also. Although, without a fan in it, there really shouldn't be any vibration or vibration dampening to speak of. So here's the safety note. Lots of good stuff there. That's some pretty small print too. If you want to read up on the safety, there you go. And then this is the quick installation guide. And again, there's not much to installing this. Let's see, are these the same? I think they just gave me two. They're the same. All right. So let me go ahead and zoom out so we can see what's going on here. Okay, so this is a typical scenario where you would have your switch in use. So let's see, where is your router? Okay, so your router, so your Ethernet's going to come in from outside, or your network, and Ethernet goes out to the switch, and it doesn't matter which port you plug in. There's your power to the unit. So we've got a PoE camera, PoE access point, and then a regular switch. So it says the switch may be different than the one shown in the example. Sometimes they make little cosmetic changes. But then there's your PC over here. You can have multiple PCs plugged in. And then a NAS unit down here you can plug in. And then here is the legend here showing you what all the lights mean. And on the back, declaration of conformity in a few different languages. And now, get it plugged in. All right, we'll plug it in, and my guess is, since this is unmanaged, it should come online pretty quickly. Managed switches have to actually boot up, and it takes them a moment to start to function. So I've got the power on, and you can see right there the power light's already on. So we should be good to go as soon as we start plugging some devices in. Okay, so now we'll hook a few other things, well actually one other thing up. Okay, now we'll get the camera plugged in, and it doesn't matter which port I use. Snap that in there. Okay, give it a moment to boot up. You can see the infrared lights, infrared LEDs are coming on there. And then when we watch, we are plugged into port 6. You can see the solid green LED on top. That means it is supplying power to the camera, and then the amber or yellowish one there that's blinking now, that tells me that the connection speed is below the 2.5 gigabit connection. So, and that's normal. Again, like I said, cameras operate at a much lower bandwidth, so you won't see speeds or connection speeds that high. Now, as far as pricing goes, the least expensive will always be just a plain Ethernet switch, no PoE, unmanaged. Those will be at the bottom, and then you get PoE switches, which are a little more expensive, and depending upon the level of power, you can get different power levels of PoE switch. So you want to take a look at the devices you plan on powering up, look at their power requirements, and make sure you pick a switch that can deliver the proper amount of power. The next level up is a managed switch, and they can of course be PoE or non-PoE. Those will be the most expensive switches in the lineup. Now, looking at our cost right now on Amazon, this switch, this PoE switch, is showing $269. Now the non-PoE version, and it looks very similar, if I can toggle back and forth here between the two, you can see they look very similar. The non-PoE version is $169, and the PoE version, which is this one, is $269. So basically you're paying $100 for the PoE functionality. Of course, you always have to keep your eye on Amazon because the prices are always changing. Okay, boys and girls, this is where I say don't try this at home, because there's nothing in here you need to ever access, and you've got some voltages in there you don't want to mess with, plus sensitive electrical components. But if you've ever wondered what the inside looks like, well, I'll take it apart so you don't have to, but there's the inside. You got at least one heat sink. These look like smaller heat sinks over here, a heat sink here, and a whole lot of stuff that again, this is not serviceable. There's no reason for you to ever go inside, but you can see it is fanless. There's no fan in there. In fact, there's not really much room for a fan. But that's what the inside of one of these looks like. And if you're new to the whole PoE or power over Ethernet thing, another alternative or an option that you should be aware of, these are called injectors. TRENDnet has a variety of these injectors. They've got multi-port here, and I don't have any from TRENDnet. This one here is from Ingenious, but the way this functions, you have LAN and PoE. You got two ports right there. So basically you've got a cable coming in from your non-PoE switch or your router, and then when it leaves, it has power injected into it. That's why they call this an injector. So it puts power into the cable so you can power a PoE device with this device and not have to have a PoE switch. But these are not cheap, and by the time you buy a couple of these, well, you pretty much could have bought a switch. Okay, so that covers injectors. I just wanted to point that out because when I first started fooling with PoE stuff, I had no idea what an injector was, so you learn as you go. All right, so the next thing I'll do, two things I want to do. One, I'll go over what PoE really is and the different levels of PoE, and I'll bring up a little graphic. And then the next thing I like to do on a switch like this, since it isn't managed, I can't really monitor what data is going through it, or the bandwidth usage of the ports. But what I'll do is I'll plug in as many devices as I can to stress the PoE system, see if I can cause it to fault. Probably won't be able to do that. And I'll hook up several devices that I can really flood it with a lot of data and see basically how smoothly the data moves through the switch. Okay, let's look at the specifications. These are the basic specifications. You can get into the real technical stuff if you go to the TRENDnet website and look up this particular switch. But basically you've got 8 2.5 gig ports. They are all PoE or Power over Ethernet Plus ports. You've got a 100 watt total power budget. That means you've got 100 watts to share between all of the ports. It is IEEE 802.3BZ 2.5G compliant. It supports the 802.3 AT and AF standards for PoE, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment. I've got another slide to look at. And backward compatible, of course, I haven't seen a switch really that isn't. 40 gigabits total switching capacity. That's a lot of data. And again, I'm going to try and push as much as I can through this switch and see if I can, I don't know that I can really get close to that, but see if I can have any issues or notice any issues with traffic moving through the switch. I really doubt that I will, but that's sort of what that means. Fanless design, so it should be ultra super quiet with no fan, no moving parts. Wall mountable, compliance there for US and Canada, and a limited lifetime warranty. All right, the next slide here, this really highlights the different flavors of power over Ethernet. You can see there are 4 basic flavors or styles or versions. The first 2 there that are in yellow, there's regular PoE, power over Ethernet, which is the AF spec. That can deliver up to, looks like 15.4 watts maximum. The next one is PoE Plus, that's the AT standard. So this switch does cover the AF and the AT standard. And again, you have a maximum of 30 watts there on the AT standard. If you have devices that draw more power than 30 watts, you want to go to the next level up. And again, those can get pretty expensive when you get into that level of power over Ethernet, and that's a PoE++. And there are 2 versions of that, a Type 3 and a Type 4, but we're really looking at the PoE and PoE+ today. So when you're selecting a PoE switch, you really need to look at the devices that you're going to attach, and for the most part, your PoE and PoE+ will cover cameras, PTZ cameras, most of your smaller Wi-Fi access points, things like that. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is really load the switch up with as much stuff as I can, draw as much power as I can. Now, remember, this is a 100 watt total power, so you've got up to 30 watts per port with 8 ports. And really, these devices here, this is a WAX 615, both of these are. I've got 2 of those. These are Netgear Insight access points. These are both 2.5 gig. And they pull about 22 watts, 23 watts each. This is an Ingenious access point, 220S. This pulls about 13 watts, roughly. This is an Ingenious Sky Key. It doesn't pull much. Yeah, I don't even think it shows on the bottom there. This is an Anki camera. So it pulls maybe 8 to 10 watts, I believe. I've got one of my servers plugged in, and I've moved a lot of data through here back and forth just to see if anything slows down, and it doesn't. It performs fine. And looking at the switch here, you can see what's going on. Ports 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the solid green LED at the top. These are all active as far as supplying power to devices, as well as ports 6 and 8. Port 7, the orange one here, this is the Ethernet cable that goes over to my network, so of course there won't be any power draw there. And then port 5, this goes over to my server, so it's not doing anything as far as power draw either. But the rest of them there you can see. Now, the solid green means it is connected at 2.5 gig, and anything that is the amber or sort of the yellowish color, that means we are connected at a speed below 2.5, so it could be gigabit, it could be less than gigabit. But the solid green at the bottom, or I guess it's really a flashing green, indicates that it is connected at 2.5 gigabits. Now, as far as temperature, I don't have this loaded to the max, but it is warm to the touch. It's not hot, it's just warm. And then the power supply here also a little warm. Now this is rated at delivering up to 120 watts, and if your switch is capable of delivering up to 100 watts, then your power supply should be a little oversized, and it is, so that's a good thing. But like I said, it's not alarmingly warm, just a little warm to the touch. So if we add up the power draw from the devices here, we're probably in the 60-65 watt range, again well below the 100 watt limit, and again you're allowed up to 30 watts per port, and that comes out of the 100 watt total budget. And to clarify, any single port, any individual port is capable of delivering up to 30 watts. You can't have all of them delivering 30 watts at the same time. You would have a draw of 240 watts, which you can't do on this particular switch. So that means that if a port draws 30 watts, you've got a device that's plugged in that uses 30 watts, then that's subtracted from the 100 total. So that means you have 70 watts now to split among the remaining ports. And if you had two devices that were using up to 30 watts, That's 60. That means you only have 40 watts available to the remaining ports. So that's how that works. And again, this is a non-managed switch, so you can't log in or access what's going on. But what I did was try to connect as many Wi-Fi devices that are within range to my access points, as well as my server, and move data, as much data as I could, back and forth between my test system and my server, to see if I could pick up any sort of a situation where the data was being bottlenecked by the switch, and I saw none of that at all. It moved it at the same speeds that I see with my other network switches. Alright, so this is a nice little switch from TRENDnet. If you need 8 ports of unmanaged 2.5 gig PoE Plus goodness, the TPE TG380 might be the one for you, especially if you have $269 burning a hole in your pocket. At least that's what it is right now on Newegg and Amazon. Keep your eyes open for sales and special deals, especially with the holidays coming up. So I would give this the Overclockers Club Gold Award. This is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.